Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's Ecologic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan. And today I've got Travis Baumgardner on the podcast. He is the co-founder and the chief customer officer of Sambazon, a brand that introduced certified organic and fair trade acai to the global marketplace. Travis, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Ted. I'm glad to be here.
And where are you right now as we speak? Our listeners always like to know where people are. I know most of your product is coming right out of the Amazon, but where are you right now?
I'm in San Clemente, California, and that's where Sambazon is headquartered too.
Great, great. And what a nice place to live, right?
Oh, it's gorgeous, and some of the best weather and surf in the continental United States. So two of my
Yeah.
passions is being outside and getting in the water.
And when was the last time you were in the water?
I was in the water last night for about 3 hours, or right, but from until dusk. So
Oh, that's
there's a
great.
nice swell out there. So, and the water is warm. You can trunk it.
Yeah, oh, great. Oh, I love it. I love it. I lived in Laguna Beach for a number of years. Let's talk acai. It comes from a palm tree, or it's a species of palm tree. They're very tall, as I understand it, up to 80 feet tall, and climbers climb up with machetes to bring down this fruit. Am I getting it pretty much right here?
You're correct. You're correct. Yes, it comes from acai comes from the Amazon River Delta, the eastern part of the Amazon, in these tidal flooded forests. So you have the influence of the tides coming in every day. And this area is known technically as the Varzea, which is the tidal flooded forest. So you have these communities there who have been there for centuries, known as the Ribeirinhos. And Ribeirinhos in Portuguese literally means the river people, or the people who live along the river banks.
Hmm.
So they harvest acai not in monocultures or plantations, but in these biodiverse agroforestry areas. And it's a pretty interesting relationship they have with the land, right? It's not one of extraction, it's regeneration. They actively manage and enrich their areas. And acai is just one of the many different non-timber forest products they work with, both for their own sustenance, right? And income too, as an income source.
Yeah. Now the indigenous peoples there have been eating acai for forever, right? For a long, long time.
Yes. I mean,
And how
yeah,
would they?
for centuries and centuries and centuries, right?
What form would they eat that? What
So
would it look like?
they climb the tree, they grab the broom of the palm tree, right? That's full of the acai fruits.
Yeah.
They bring it down, and then they shuck the berries off the fronds or off these brooms,
Yeah.
and then they bring it home, they put it in some warm water, and they soften it. And then, the acai berry looks like a blueberry on the outside, but
Hmm.
it's 95% seed. Actually, if you can see that, that is the seed.
Yeah.
So they soften this berry to remove the skin from the seed, and then they have like a homemade sieving system that they run it through, and they make like what they call the wine, which is a puree of the
Hmm.
acai, and it's almost warm. And then they eat it as a porridge or as a side dish
Mm.
with every single meal that they have. So they're eating it almost as a savory platform together with rice, beans, cassava flour, fish or game that they are consuming on a daily basis. So it's really, one of the most, staple items of their diet. Not
Yeah.
only their diet, but it's also a huge source of their income.
Right. Right. Now, we're going to get to this. We're selling it in the United States. It's prime. I mean, people have all heard of acai bowls.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's usually in a sort of a frozen a dessert-like presentation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Why is it frozen? So I've already explained why you'll never see an IQF acai berry in the freezer section of a grocery store, right? Because it's 95% seed. Why is it always frozen? Well, acai has these, 50% of that skin is healthy fats, so omega-3, 6s, and 9s. It's the purple color are the polyphenols or the antioxidants,
Yeah.
and it's held together by fiber. So, and actually, there's no sugar in it, which is interesting. Um, once they process this acai and you pick the berry, it will spoil within 24 hours. It'll go rancid. Those oils, those fats will start to turn, much like milk will. Unpasteurized milk, if you leave it out from one day to the other, that enzymatic action makes it turn funky, right? Same thing with acai, unless you freeze it. So I'm gonna get on a little tangent here on how we got to the acai bowl. So as you mentioned, acai was consumed locally in the form that I'd mentioned in the Amazon for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then in the mid 80s, you had this family called the Gracies. Have you ever heard of Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the martial arts out of Brazil?
Hmm.
So they're the founding fathers of the Gracie family. They're from the Amazon, from Belém and or Pará state, and they were opening up their training centers in Rio de Janeiro in the mid 80s. So they developed the martial art Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they also had, their diet, which was called the Gracie diet, and a big part of their diet was acai. But they had to freeze acai and bring it from the Amazon all the way down to Rio. And it's just like any other fruit, right? Once you freeze it, it kind of gets decharacterized. Like if you freeze a strawberry and it's frozen, it's not the same experience as you have eating
Right.
a strawberry. So anyway, they worked with all these different concoctions and they ended up blending it, right, with inverted syrup, guarana syrup, which is basically inverted sugar with an extract of another Amazonian plant called guaraná, which provides natural caffeine. And then they would top it with fruit and granola, and that became the acai bowl.
Right.
And that became prevalent in Rio in the late 80s. So if you were to take an acai bowl up to the Amazon and show somebody from the Amazon, say, hey, this is acai, they're going to go, you're crazy. That's not acai.
Yeah. Right.
But that's what I found, right? When I moved to Brazil in 1995, it was just starting to become popular in Rio de Janeiro. And like many of the other, people in Rio at the time, I fell in love with acai.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was, where it came from. I just knew it was unique and it gave me this, unknown source of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. The nutritional benefits are fantastic, right? It's loaded with antioxidants, anthocyanins,
Yeah.
improves cholesterol, improves brain health, supports digestion, low in sugar, healthy in terms of these fats, 3, 6, and 9 omega fats. So you were describing just before we jumped on the recording that you grew up in Austin, Texas. You were at UC Santa Barbara. You met some people there that were Brazilians. That got you to go to Brazil. You were going to go for a few weeks, and you stayed for many years. You just decided, let's bring this product to America.
Yeah, I went on a 3-week trip to Brazil that ended up turning into 3 months. I enrolled at the local university in Rio, a Catholic university, and I was studying environmental geography. And I was very comfortable, right? I was, living the life in Rio, eating acai every day, showing up late to class,
Speaking
and
Portuguese, I presume, at that point.
learning how to speak Portuguese.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Showing
one
up
day
late.
I showed up late to class, And my professor looked at me and he said, "Hey, do you know where that came from?" And I was holding an acai bowl in my hand. And I looked at it and I said, "I have no idea." And anyway, he turned that into a teaching moment and explained that comes from a palm tree that is native to the floodplains of the Amazon. It's harvested not in monoculture or plantations, but in biodiverse agroforestry systems by these local riverside communities known as the Ribeirinhos. And and it's a fundamental part of their life, right? Of their
Yeah.
income, a staple form of their diet. So, that was my aha moment. And I flew north to the Amazon to see it myself, and then, what I saw, I went, into Marajó Island. I took a small boat, along the riverbanks deep into the estuary, and there were these homes on stilts. And, and it was there that I met the Ribeirinhos, the river people. And, what I noticed was, hey, they were, living with the land, right? They were part of it. And they were practicing a fundamentally different model of agriculture, right? Not of
Hmm.
extraction, but of integration. They were enriching the land instead of taking away from the land. And I was like, wow, this isn't just tradition. This is right. This is the future, right? And
Hmm.
this is and that's kind of the start of the triple bottom line philosophy. Like, hey, can we, I know that all of my friends and family who have come to Rio just love acai. It's one of the first things I do on the Rio de Janeiro tour. It's obviously healthy. I grew up in Austin, Texas, as I mentioned, so I had a little bit of country bumpkin Whole Foodsy in me. The Whole Foods is headquartered there,
Yeah.
and and that's when I decided to go for it. Right, let's take this to the United States. It seems like a good idea.
Now that fantastic story, and I'm concerned now about how you get from the rivers in Amazon to market with only 24 hours before you have to refrigerate here. But
Yeah.
you're going to get to that. But how did you turn this into a business? How did you become an importer and you helped found Sambazon?
Right. So, I'm one of the co-founders, and my partner is actually from San Clemente. So I was living in Brazil at the time. And, before actually I Sambazon existed. So this was 1997 when I started another company. And I had to fail to learn a lot first, right? And I think a lot of us in the entrepreneurial world,
Right.
um, have that experience. We had this first company, and we made the first ever export of acai out of Brazil in 1997. I was in Brazil, sourcing it, and my partners were in the United States marketing and selling it. And it was a slog. We were using different
Mm.
co-mans in Brazil. None of us had any experience in the natural foods industry or the CPG industry. And within 18 to 24 months, we closed up shop, right? We just said, hey, we can't burn through any more capital. In the meantime,
Mm.
I had met my wife, who's Brazilian, in Rio, and we opened up a restaurant called Amazon Life Cafe, which had ingredients in Rio, and it had ingredients from the Amazon,
Mm.
served in a modern format within a beautiful setting inside the botanical gardens of Rio de Janeiro. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was there running this restaurant. I was also, working with all these different juice bowl shops and smoothie chains in Rio and Sao Paulo to source acai from them because it was exploding. Acai was just, in the first time I tried out, when I moved to to Rio in 1995, gosh, there were only a dozen places that served it. And 3 years later, there's just like hundreds of places. It's in Sao Paulo, it's in all these other southern metropolitan cities in Brazil. So in 2000, I heard about one of the suppliers up of acai that I'd known in the Amazon. Hey, I've heard about this guy named. I want you to meet Ryan Black. Yeah, he's another American kid who has started this company, Sambazon. So we met, and I took him up the Amazon, showed him what I knew, and we opened up Sambazon Brazil. But one of the our agreements was that we were going to, it was really important sustainability side of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that the business model was not only going to be about economic success, but environmental and social success. So we made a big bet, right? That people, planet, and profit can scale.
Yeah.
And that was from day one of Sambazon. And Sambazon is actually an acronym for the Sustainable Acai Management of the Brazilian Amazon. So yeah,
How did
that's
you
how we started with Sambazon, right?
how did you develop those relationships with the locals that were picking it for their own sustenance?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, right, the market in southern Brazil for acai was growing. And the traditional way that the acai was getting to the market was that you had these fruit processors up in the northern Amazon, who were historically processing other tropical fruits like guava and pineapple and mango and whatever, right? Then acai
Mm.
became hot. So they would source acai at these markets, right? And the acai would get from the forest to these markets through a chain of middlemen, right? And so you
Yeah.
had no idea of the origin of the acai. And at the time, acai, I mean, these ribeirinhos, these river people, were very isolated. They had
Yeah.
no means of getting their fruit to the market, and were exploited more often than not by these middlemen who would barter with them or pay them lower than their cost of goods for the acai. So that was the paradigm shift that we started at Sambazon, was that we, first of all, we incorporated the company in Brazil, a subsidiary, and we started purchasing the fruit directly from these co-ops and from these growers. And then
Mm.
we would get transport, send that fruit to a processor. And people thought we were nuts. They're like, why would you do that? You could just buy acai from a processor and import it into the United States and focus on branding, and marketing your product. But we
Right.
made a choice 26
Going all
years
the way
ago
back to
to
the
do it the
source.
hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like it was counterintuitive at the time, right?
And
Like
the whole
even
time you've got to
investors in the
keep
United
these.
States, they're like, "What are you doing? Why would you do that?"
Well, and then you've got to keep everything cold, right? You were using a lot of ice
Yeah, so
to
then you had
pack and
yeah,
ship.
so yeah, and we got to the point where, the team here in the United States was doing a great job of marketing and selling acai. And so we were working with these different manufacturers, right, in the Amazon, where we would send the fruit. They would process the fruit, freeze it, and package it under the Sambazon brand. And then we would export it to ourselves, buy it back from them, and export it Sambazon Brazil to Sambazon the United States. So the entire uh, chain is cold all the time, right? That's just
Yeah.
a fundamental aspect of our business. So, but it got to the point, right, where we were managing 5 or 6 different co-mans here, or fruit processors here in Brazil. And, growth was big, and, new challenges arose, especially on quality, right? Quality,
Mm.
cost. A lot of these processors saw us, growing, and, every year there was a new price increase or a new quality issue, and so we decided to take our destiny in our own hands, and we, got some financing to build our own facility. And it was the US government, actually, an agency called OPIC that oversees private investment corporation from the State Department that gave us the funding, right, to do that, and that was a program through, it was the USAID office in Brasilia that put us in contact with them. And it's to promote, US businesses abroad. So, we got the funding in 2005 and commissioned the place in 2006.
Right. You've been very focused on fair trade,
Yep.
paying the pickers what they really deserve. And you've also certified organic your product. Can you talk about those aspects of your business?
Yeah. It's funny that organic certification happened first. And, you know, we were actually certified organic before there was the United States NOP, National Organic Program.
Hmm.
So we've always been on the forefront of, sustainable business model, right? Verified through third parties, because you see a
And it
lot
makes
of
sense. I mean,
companies. Yeah.
these fruits are way up 80 feet tall in a tree. You're not spraying them with pesticides or herbicides or anything like that, right? It's just a natural
Right.
product.
Yeah, there's that aspect. I would say 99% of what they were doing, right, what the Hiberneiros was already compliant with
Yeah.
organic, right?
Right.
However, you did have certain, I mean, they didn't even know what organic meant. So that was a
Right.
challenge, right? They didn't even
Yeah.
know what sustainable development meant. And we were working with hundreds and hundreds of these growers. So us showing up every day, having our own facility, our own teams, going into the forest, working with these communities, that's not something that just happens overnight. That's relationship you build up year after year, showing up, working with them in the good times and the bad times. And, it's a stakeholder capitalism, right? That's always been our,
Hmm.
model, as opposed to shareholder capitalism, that we're going to give as much, thought and attention and every business decision to all the stakeholders within our business model, not just being driven by the bottom line, which is important. The bottom line, I don't deny that,
Sure.
but you know, so
But you built the trust to create that supply chain.
absolutely right, and we continue to do that every day. So
And that feeds right
last
into this
year,
whole notion of fair trade. You're paying
yeah,
a higher price than they had gotten before.
yeah. So first we got the organic certification dialed in. We built the relationships, right? The chain of custody, being able to document that, right? Going back and, like, if you go and scan a Sambazon product, at the register of a grocery store, send us the lot code. We can tell you the farm, the day, and the name of the farmer where that fruit inside that product came from, right? That's how dialed in we are on our chain of custody. So, having that in place then allowed us to move towards the raise the bar to the next level, which was implementing fair trade certification. And fair trade, right? It's not only paying a fair amount, right, for the acai fruit. It's also, you set aside a fund, which is a percentage of the amount of acai or that you buy from these communities every year. That fund is then, the money in that fund is used for community outreach programs. So, two of these guys are in an archipelago area, these Ribeirinhos, and they're far from city centers. So their two main, challenges are education and healthcare. So,
Yeah.
a big part of that fund over the years has been used to provide capex to build schools and health outposts that we then turn over to the local municipalities to run and the communities themselves. So that's another aspect, right? That the fund from the fair trade program. And then you've got the aspect of, right, just exploitation, human exploitation, right? Which is very, very important, especially in the Amazon, right? That you don't want any slave labor or child labor.
Mm.
And, we can't have a company with based on a mission of sustainability and not have a supply chain that doesn't live up to it, and it's not third party verified. So, we can't be putting Sambazon on the shelves of Costco and Whole Foods and Target and have a risk, right, of any type of you know exploitation going on. So, again, we do that through third party verification with the best certifiers in each right, in each category, whether it be organic certification, fair trade certification, food safety, right? Food safety is huge, and especially for all of our customers and consumers, that we are the acai is being processed in a way it's not going to get anybody have any issues, right? Health issues. So
Right.
we're
And you're still there's still there are no monocultures growing acai. It's all
Oh,
still
there are, yeah. I mean, there's that's the challenge, right? So of the entire, we don't, Sambazon maybe represents a little bit of, maybe 5%, maybe a little over 5% of all the acai being harvested.
Oh, it does. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. So Brazil, if you look at the entire annual production of acai, 70% of acai is consumed in the Amazon. That makes sense just by the local people there, have they, like they've always done. These are general terms, but let's say 20 to 25% is consumed in the rest of Brazil, right? And that's new consumption. And maybe 10% is export. We represent well over 50% of the export market, which is great. Of But we set the bar, right? And we
Yeah.
are the on the extreme of the good way to work with acai, which is good, right? That was always our goal, and we see a lot of our competition. They also adopted organic certification. Great. They've adopted. Some have had fair trade too. Great. Our next bar is, that I'm happy to announce, and is, have you heard of ROC certification, regenerative organic certification? So it's
Mm.
that's the next level up. Organic started here, what, 25, 30 years ago. And, they were thinking, hey, if we can get $10 billion a year in sales in the United States of organic products, that would be great. Now it's like hundreds and hundreds of billions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but, basically organic means we just stop putting poison in our food, right?
That's right. It's very logical.
It's not synonymous with sustainability, more often it can be.
Yeah.
It doesn't give credit for companies who are doing something beyond organic, like Sambazon's been doing for the last 25 years, because all the consumer would see is that USDA organic seal on our products, but it doesn't say anything about
Mm.
biodiverse agroforestry areas, sustainability. So we're really excited to be part of the ROC certification,
It's great. Yeah,
and
that's
because
great.
that's the next level of organic. And consumers want, it's one of the hottest trends going, right, in terms of certification and labels and badges you can have on a product in the food and beverage industry. And it's going to continue to grow. And it's finally going to give us credit for all of the work that we've done over the last 26 years, because it takes into consideration biodiversity, soil health. It also takes into consideration the human element and folds that into one nice, beautiful label that a consumer can look at and trust.
That's great. You must be very gratifying. We just have a couple minutes left, but I want to make sure we talk about your processing facilities, because now you have two processing facilities. You told me before we started recording that you're producing about 70 million pounds of acai per year, but that what 90% of that weight is the seed. And so you end up with this tremendous amount of seeds, about 50 plus million pounds of seeds. Talk a little bit more about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so we've our ESG, right, reporting has become very advanced. I'm happy to say you can go to our website and download our annual impact report. It's a 35 page read. We just issued our 2025 impact report. And we're looking at all the different buckets, right? Scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, that we're, where how we can reduce our footprint. So we've always known that these seeds, right, is a huge opportunity for us. Um, so, originally when we first started with our own facility, we had to pay to truck these seeds out of our facility, right? And they were just a waste product, and they were dumped somewhere. Um, and then we saw an opportunity that, hey, these seeds could be used to power industry, right? And they can replace other forms of inputs that the other local industries were using to generate power in their system. So mostly it was propane, and then even, sadly, it was hardwoods, right? Where did
Yeah.
those hardwoods come from? They came from the Amazon rainforest. So we started with one local industry, and we said, hey, can you, instead of using hardwoods, replace your you can, we'll sell you our acai seeds, and actually it'll provide you, be cheaper than you having to buy these hardwoods. And it ended up being more efficient for them in their energy production. So, one success story leads to another. Today, it's become a revenue stream for our company, and all 59 million pounds of seeds we sell and to other local industries so that they can use a renewable source of acai instead of hardwoods that come from, deforested areas. And
Yeah.
then,
What a great.
both of the also that's a big part of the energy, element to both of our facilities. And the second part is all the energy that we use to power our plants comes from hydraulic electricity. But and then we're always thinking ahead, Ted. And the next goal is we
Sounds
want to
like
be
it.
able to turn these seeds into energy that we use for ourselves, that we can then sell back to the grid. You can also make products potentially like biochar and other elements for, asphalt and fertilizers. So we're excited about that, and we're working on that. It takes a lot of investment and technology, but there's lots of interesting new technologies out there working with biomass
Yeah.
to, as a replacement for fossil fuels all around the world. So
What a great story. What a great story. Let's end with where our listeners can buy your product. You've mentioned Costco. I think I heard Walmart and Target also.
yes, Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, Sprouts, Albertsons, Kroger's, the Publix of the world. If you go to our website, there's a retail finder, so you can plug in your zip code and it'll
Across the country?
all everywhere. We're in about 30,000 grocery stores. We're also, most of the acai, when you go to like a tropical smoothie cafe or a nectar or a juice it up or a smoothie king, that's being, supplied by us, Sambazon.
Yeah.
And then we also have our own, Sambazon acai bowl shops. Most of them are in airports. So I think there's about 13 or 14 these days. We're in Orange County, San Diego, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Charlotte, to mention a few.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, great. Hey, Travis, congratulations. What a fantastic story. Your product is fantastic. Been great chatting with you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
absolutely, Ted. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
That's it. Thanks for listening to Flanagan's Ecologic. We'll see you next time.